Hello and welcome to The Print. The NCERT has recently released Class 8 Social Science textbook, which has sparked quite a controversy over its portrayal of the Mughals and the Delhi Sultanate. Today we have with us Professor Michel Danino, who is the head of NCERT's committee which has drafted the Social Sciences textbook, to discuss the book in detail. Welcome to The Print, sir.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Sir, first of all, we would like to, of course, ask about this Class 8 textbook, which has recently been released. This month only it has been released. And it is in news because it has actually put the Mughals and the Delhi Sultanate in a different light from what it was there in earlier textbook. Could you elaborate on this aspect, sir?
Yes. So, I wrote a note recently where I, first of all, remarked that there's a bit of an irony there because traditionally, history has been one of the most boring topics for the students, average school students in India, according to many surveys, in fact. But we find the opposite in the world of the media. It seems to be the most exciting topic for the media. So I'm happy to comment and to answer your question. But before I do that, it's very important, you see, to not to jump into the contents straight off. What I mean to say is these textbooks, and we have come out with for class 6, part 1 of class 7 and part 1 of class 8, the one you are referring to now. These are written under a very different mandate and a very different approach, which is basically the mandate of the National Education Policy 2020, supplemented by a big document called the National Curriculum Framework for School Education 2023. So unless we understand that we are working on a totally different basis, then first of all, there is this constant impulse of comparing, and many journalists have done that. They've taken the old textbook, the new textbook, they said, well, they removed this, they added this, and so on. And we didn't remove anything, we didn't add anything. We just wrote the textbooks on a totally different new basis. So therefore, from our point of view, there is no point in comparing. And in fact, we never referred to the old textbooks as far as I know, or maybe some of our contributors did, but this was not our starting point. So therefore, first of all, what are the, in practice, how do you feel the impact of the NEP in the textbooks? I hope with the students and from preliminary feedback and survey from the students, it seems that we have at least partly succeeded in making the textbooks more interesting, more engaging. First of all, when you just open them, and if you allow me, I'll just take the copy of the grade 8 textbook, which I have right here. So when you just take them and you browse through them, first of all, you will see a lot of graphics.
Pictures.
These graphics have stories to tell. So there's a lot of attention to design. And the main purpose here is to reduce the textual content. I won't say to the barest minimum because we could do much more to reduce it, but then it would be, there has to be a transition. If we went all the way, as is done in certain foreign countries, where you open textbooks and you see almost only graphics and very, very little text here and there. If we did that, then it would be too unsettling for the teaching community and for the students as well. There has to be some transition. But we have tried to really reduce the textual load for all the themes in the textbook to the minimum. So that, first of all, we don't encourage rote learning because, the more text, the more data you give, whether it's geography, whether it's history, economics, all those subjects are very prone to becoming heavy in terms of data. It's very easy to go overboard. And then the students start resenting it because they have to, swallow it. And many schools will still be teaching memorization over understanding. So that's, of course, a separate issue. We cannot control all this, but we are aware of the educational context in, let's say, average schools in India. And our target was really that average school, whether it's government or private. there are elite schools or there are better schools, let's just say whether elite or not, that's fine, good for them. But, we have 265, I think, millions of school-going kids in India. We have to keep them in mind. And therefore, that's the first thing. Reduce the content. But when you reduce the content, you might be tempted to become a bit superficial, to just treat things, very lightly, quickly. And then it becomes very flimsy. You can do that, and you achieve the reduction, but then you don't really leave a meaningful impact. So this is the challenge. And this is what I've been trying to explain again and again, that on the one hand, we try to reduce the textual load, the amount of data, and therefore to deal with topics more briefly or more in overview, and yet we want to retain the essential. Now, when we come, and I'm coming gradually, please excuse the long introduction to your question. When we come to topics related to history, so the textbook is not, by the way, a history textbook. It's like its predecessors. I think I have to do this.
It's a combined textbook now, right?
Yeah, it's a combined textbook. It has 5 themes. One is akin to more or less like geography, another is more or less like history, another is more or less like cultural heritage. Then there is governance and democracy, and finally economics. So therefore, when we combine these 5 themes in a single book, which is just 200 pages if you exclude the preliminaries, we have only this much for really the pure historical content. And still another big challenge which has to be kept in mind is that at the end of class 8, so there'll be a part 2, this is part 1.
Okay.
At the end of class 8, our objective, keeping in mind that a lot of students in India drop out after class 8 for economic reasons, and so there are many surveys. This has been given in answers in the parliament and so on. We wanted that they should have completed by the end of class 8 a broad overview of Indian history all the way to independence, not post-independent, that would be far too much, but at least from prehistory, which is, and of course the Indus Harappan civilization in class 6, all the way to independence in class 8, you can see that we have to travel for the minimal content a very wide expanse of time. So that's another challenge. Therefore, and I'm finally coming to your question, when we deal with the topic, whether it is the Mauryan Empire or the Mughal Empire or the Delhi Sultanate or the colonial era, which is also part of class 8 textbook, we have to really think very, very hard and say, what is it that we really want the student to absorb, and what are really the main salient features, the high points that really deserve our attention, and that we would ideally like the student to remember always, all his or her life. Why only the exam? It's not fair to just give content targeting ultimately examinations. So therefore, we made certain choices, no doubt, and there is a lot that is left out, and we never denied that. So we've been blamed for leaving this out, leaving that out. But given the context which I have explained, it was unavoidable. We have tried to be honest to history. There is nationalist history, there is Marxist history, there are many kinds of histories, and good historians know that no interpretation of history is final. That you can never have, I think it was Professor Carr who wrote a book on history, and he said something like objective history is a joke. Not exact words, but there's no such thing as objective history. It all depends on the particular lens of the historian. But I believe there is something which we can call honest history, given the amount of data which we have, where we try to do justice to, but of course we have to make certain choices. So we decided that there are certain darker chapters, as we call them, not chapters in the sense of a textbook, but chapters in the sense of events, developments, occurrences in all countries. And we found that so far in India, there had been a tendency to make a very gentle and slightly sanitized version of history where we avoid all unpleasantness, thinking perhaps that this is going to, traumatize perhaps the student and so on. We took another approach. First of all, we made an honest disclaimer, if you wish to call it that, to the student that there are darker chapters in history, and we were not. Some commentators in the media said that we spoke of dark ages in the medieval period. We never used this phrase. It's about brutal events, brutal warfare. But warfare has happened all the time. There are different kinds of warfare. There is warfare which does not impact the general population so much. And there is a warfare which does, and which can involve all kinds of cruelty and so on. And we wanted to make that difference because it was historically, in our view, a valid approach. But we did not focus only on that. And contrary to some media report, we did not just say that, Akbar was brutal in his young age, and that is by his own admission, by his own memoir, Akbarnama, where he relates, his military campaigns, and you can feel that he's not himself so happy about his own past, but he is honest about it. So there's nothing wrong in mentioning this, because it shows also the different faces of a particular character, the complexity of historical figures, and we have precisely tried to, avoid extreme characterization, either positive or negative. So whether we have succeeded, first of all, to me, the biggest challenge is in keeping the student engaged, interested.
Yeah.
That we will have to see. For the class 6 and class 7, textbooks, we've had some fairly positive and encouraging reports from students.
Okay.
We've had even just the other day from teachers in a Bangalore school, the report that students from higher classes are grabbing those textbooks of the lower classes, reading them and complaining to the teachers that, why did we not have such textbooks when we were studying in classes 6 and 7? Now, that, of course, is a big compliment. Whether it can be extended to many more schools, we don't know. But this is, for me, the first thing. Secondly, yes, the way we have approached history will be scrutinized. We will have to take criticism in mind and see, how best we can improve in next years. But I think we made a sincere attempt, and we will be either praised or blamed for it. We will see.
And sir, you just mentioned about class 7th textbook. So the 7th textbook does not contain any content about Mughals and Telesantalent. It is because of the paucity of space right now?
No, it is simply because we have followed a very broad chronological canvas. So if you remember, class 6 textbook, we were coming to the Indus civilization, and class 7 then, a chapter which eventually will be shifted to class 6, by the way. It was not in class 6 because of paucity of time. We have a chapter on the rise of Janapadas, Mahajanapadas, and the Mauryan Empire.
Yeah.
And then in the second, so this is in class 7, and it goes, class 7 part 1, mind you, it goes all the way to the Gupta Empire, which again is a huge canvas to cover. So class 7 part 2, which is being prepared at the moment, and which you have not seen, will have that intermediary period between, let us say, very roughly 600 CE, the end of the Gupta age, roughly, all the way to 1200, which is where class 8 part 1 starts from, the Delhi Sultanate. These are approximate dates, but they're convenient landmarks. So 600 years will be dealt with in part 2 of class 7 textbook.
Okay.
Class 8 textbook then, as you saw, goes all the way from the Sultanate to the colonial era, another huge stretch of time.
Yeah.
And the second part of class 8, then we'll have to, and we kept a little bit more space, will be basically the freedom movement, the fight for independence, all the way to independence. See, this is something that, of course, naturally students can be more easily sensitized to and should be perhaps more aware of than, very ancient periods. So therefore, we thought we will give a bit more time and space to the freedom movement. So this is what is coming up. So you can see now that we have a continuous canvas of times, tapestry, which is the name of the historical theme, tapestry of the past, for over just those 3 years, from almost prehistory to India's independence, which is, again, quite a big challenge to do in a restricted space, keeping in mind that we have 4 other themes to give space to in our textbooks.
When do we expect these textbooks, the part 2 of class 7th and 8th, sir?
If all goes well, by September, October, we should have them. We have been fighting against, running against time, racing against tight deadlines. The difficulty here is that we're supposed to innovate. We're supposed, as I said at the start, to prepare these textbooks on a very, very different basis. You might have noticed a lot of pedagogical inputs. We might have noticed that we keep throwing questions, reflection points at the student. We want the student to develop a critical mind. So we're supposed to do all this fairly, innovative work in a very short time, compressed timeline. But these are the conditions under which we operate. But I think by October we should have them.
Sir, in class 8th textbook, there's a really nice portrayal of Marathas. So there is a section of academia which has termed it ideological, and they're calling it like selective glorification and selective vilification of some parts of history. How do you see this criticism?
We selected the Marathas because they obviously played a very, very important part, and that is non-controversial at least, in the dismantling of the Mughal Empire. Remember that Aurangzeb had to spend the last 25 years of his life in the Deccan. He could not go back to Delhi at all. And of course, he was also fighting other regional powers, but the Marathas became very soon his main worry. And ultimately, after him, the Maratha Empire covered a very large part of India, even though it was not for a long period of time. So therefore, first of all, from a strict angle of political history, if you like, they did deserve our attention. Whether we have glorified excessively, I don't know. I would, we insisted, for example, on mentioning the Maratha raids in Bengal, and which were very brutal, and how this, traumatized the local population. We could have avoided that if we were just doing glorification. We did not. And I think by and large, it was also, those of our team who wrote maybe wanted also to counterbalance the kind of neglect that the Marathas have received so far. I think that they were mentioned, not exactly in passing, but in a very cursory manner earlier. So they also, deserve much study, more study than we could have done. For example, the administration system was quite innovative in many respects. It was different from what was there around at their time. And they were really trying to innovate. They were really trying to create a new basis or a new foundation for a different kind of empire. So we've tried in a short span of time. The Mughal Empire, for example, I think has more pages, much more than the chapter on the Marathas. But again, we will take all the feedback and see how best to deal with it.
Yeah. And so the book also, we can say, critically portrayed the colonial period. Like it's more critical than we have seen it earlier in the textbooks. So could you elaborate about this approach?
Well, this again is something that, our team brainstormed about. We gave a lot of reflection on how to deal with this colonial period, which, to be very honest and frank, cannot be done in a single chapter. We cannot do justice. So we're not claiming that we've done justice at all to the colonial period. It would require 300-400 pages to really examine, even cursorily, all the aspects of that period. So many complex developments took place, and this interaction between a very, very different culture, very, very different political setup, military setup, with what existed in India, it was like a collision of two worlds. So very clearly, we do not claim that we have described the colonial period exhaustively, absolutely not. But we felt that by and large, young Indians retain a kind of a positive image of the colonial period without realizing all the damage it has done, not only in terms of outright victims. So, the famines, at least this is something that is slowly getting to be known, though it was almost non-existent in all textbooks. The engineered famines, to some extent engineered, or at least they certainly were made much worse by the ruthless taxation policies of the British, and also the deliberate lack of relief that was given to the victims. So we felt, again, this has been one guiding principle, that any self-respecting nation owes respect to the victims of past atrocities, and these were atrocities. Secondly, the plunder. Now, the plunder of India's wealth is not something controversial. It is something that the British themselves described. All the data we have on the vast amount of wealth extracted from India in through different channels, outright taxation, creating a kind of, the India debt, by which India had to refund the colonial powers, for example, for the railway construction, for the telegraph construction, for the Indo-Afghan wars, for the soldiers they brought to India to stop the so-called mutiny of 1857, the Great Rebellion of 1857. So all of these were massive extractions, and the British themselves are quite candid about it, because we have all the facts and figures from their own reports. So when you analyze them, you find that India in a short time was still before the British rule expanded, it was still a fairly prosperous land. And there was still a very good agricultural production and very vibrant trade, vibrant exports, from cotton to spices to all kinds of finished goods. So all this was destroyed in a very short time. Within 100 years, almost, India became a highly impoverished land. And we wanted that students should be aware of this. Again, our disclaimer explains that this is not something we should blame today's Britons for. But nevertheless, it is something that when a nation interacts with another nation, this historical context has to be honestly dealt with.
So there has been outcry over this Odisha's Paika rebellion. Like there is a section of academia which think that it has been left out, but you just mentioned that nothing has been removed or added.
I wrote a note recently, which I published on my LinkedIn network, where I made, just out of fun, I could say, a list of major rebellions against the British colonial rule prior to 1857, because that's where our chapter ends. So we don't consider anything beyond, first of all. And I found that I could easily list 23 major rebellions. Not one or two, but 23. From the late 18th century to the mid-19th century, 23 major rebellions in many parts of India. Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, Northeast, Gujarat, Rajasthan, and so on and so forth, and Odisha and Bengal. So why only, and out of these 23, we have mentioned only 6. Why did we mention those 6? Well, our team somehow felt that were important and fairly representative of, a geographical spread.
Yeah.
But if you look at the 17 missing rebellions, you can raise 17 complaints, that we have dropped this or dropped that. Again, we have not dropped anything because we write from scratch. So there's no point in comparing. And the Paika rebellion had its importance, but everyone had. All the tribal rebellions, for example, were very important. We mentioned, I think, at least 2 of them. Because we always imagine that rebellions, by the mainstream society, by the organized society, and then we are surprised to see that very often they were by what today we call marginalized part of the society. That's a very debatable term. So we wanted to highlight that aspect also, and to show how tribal communities contributed to challenging the mighty colonial rule. So I do not think that the criticism is justified, unless we take as a principle that we should have dealt with all the 23 major rebellions. And in that case, what kind of a chapter would we have? It would have to be 100 pages, perhaps, instead of the 35 pages, I
Correct.
think.
Yeah.
It is a bit. We have made a choice.
Sir, what do we expect from class 9 to class 12 social sciences textbook, which will be coming now from next year onwards, right? What kind of changes do we expect under NEP?
This is not a question I can really answer, because it's going to be a very different team of contributors, a very different team of advisors, reviewers. Everything will be different. Why so? Because we are now entering the secondary stage.
Yeah.
Our stage 6 to 8 is called the middle stage as per the NEP 2020. And in the secondary stage, of course, we are dealing with more mature students. Now they will be something like 14 to 17 years of age. And this is really the time when the seeds we have sown in them, teaching the student to think and reflect about things rather than just swallow data. Hopefully now they will be taken at another level. And therefore, it's a time when we should go also in topics more in depth.
Yeah.
Again, not that we dealt with them superficially. I hope we had certain deep key principles. But in the secondary stage, if you take, for example, a team, let us assume, because I don't know whether the syllabus has been fixed for good. But if you take, for example, a theme like world wars or colonialism in the world, including India, or democracy, or civilization itself can be a theme. So you can go much deeper into each of these great ideas that have unfolded through history. So I hope that this is what will be looked at, but I am not aware at the moment of what is being developed there, because my focus has been the middle stage.
Understood, sir. So my last question is, sir, on every textbook which comes under NEP from last year to till this July, so there have been allegations of ideological interference. You have worked closely. You have led a team to develop these textbooks. How much interference was there, or was there any?
Well, if by ideological interference is meant of a political kind, I can say what I've stated already a couple of times, that there has been none. No political leader came to us saying, you have to put this particular figure or this particular fact, and so on. No ideological group of any kind contacted us to say, you have to include this chapter and so on. What we did have was a whole lot of suggestions. For example, a number of MPs, MLAs, public figures, intellectuals used to write to the Ministry of Education or directly to NCERT, and these suggestions would be passed on to us. And we have a big collection of them. We looked at them and we took what we thought was really relevant. I have to say honestly that most were not useful because they amounted to saying, you have to add this content, you have to add this figure, you have to add my community, my state, and so on. And it was not necessarily ideological, but it would have simply overloaded. It was not at all compatible with the approach that we were following.
Yeah.
So, however, we have also had many reviews from professionals, educationists, teachers, NCERT faculty, and so on and so forth. So really dozens of reviewers have looked at the chapters and come up with a lot of suggestions. And there we found usually many more, which were useful. So there has been definitely a very good review process, which we would have liked actually to be further extended. Ideally, if we'd had plenty of time, we would have had to even have dry runs of some draft chapters in schools, interact with students in some schools, throw questions at them, get their feedback, and so on. That, however, was not possible given the time constraints.
Correct.
So, but within those time constraints, we really did the best we could.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir, and all the very best for the upcoming books and curriculum that has to be designed by the committee now.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Thank you.